Hey guys, I hope summer is going awesome. I'm back at home, but I still wanted to participate, so tonight I'm going to share my testimony with you all. I grew up in a Christian home, and both my parents were believers, so they would take me to church every weekend and teach me about God, and I loved going to church. I went to all the camps, I went to everything. I was always there. My parents actually volunteered at church, so we were there a lot, and I'd go with them. And it was great. And I think around 5, I accepted God into my heart. But, I didn't really know what I was doing. It wasn't really, a real relationship that I had with God. And it really didn't become my own faith until probably around high school. But a lot of stuff happened in between for that to occur. So in 6th grade, my family was actually asked to leave our church. And at the time, I didn't know why. My parents just told me it was best for our family. But it did not feel best to me. I was very upset about it. I had to leave my friends and the place that I felt comfortable in. And as I said, I'd been there all the time, every weekend. I was always there. And now suddenly I can't go anymore. And it later came out, my dad told us that it was because my mom was having an affair and we needed to get away. But at the time I didn't know that and just was very mad about it. And then also around the same time, I have a disease called cystic fibrosis, which affects your lungs and your digestive system. People with it usually get frequent lung infections and are in the hospital a lot. And about 6th, 7th, 8th grade in there was when it really started getting bad for me. I'd spend a couple weeks at a time, several weeks a year in the hospital, and just was not feeling very good. In 7th grade, I had to get a feeding tube, which was awful. And that mixed with the divorce, I just was very angry, and I didn't, decide not to believe in God, but I just wasn't, God was kind of just on the back burner. I didn't have a relationship with Him. He just was this being that created the world, and I could spit out all the things for you, but I didn't believe any of it, and I don't think I really understood who God was, and, Jesus, and what that really meant. So my parents got divorced in 8th grade. Everything with the affair worked itself out, and by 9th grade, 10th grade, we were able to go back to the church. So it was actually the pastor, and he was no longer there, so we could go back. And my dad kind of stepped away from the church, but my mom went back, and so I went with her. And it's crazy looking back at it because it's that was the best thing that could have happened. It seemed awful at the time, but because of it, the messages at that church, because they brought in a new pastor, drastically changed, and they were exactly what I needed at that time. So frequently, the messages were just about how God is in control ultimately, and how things will get better. And so my health, as I mentioned, was getting worse, and by 9th grade, I was so sick. I was in the hospital, and my doctor flat out told me, he's like, hey, you have 5 more years to live at most. And as a 15-year-old, that is devastating to hear. And although, I knew all along, and, it wasn't I was oh my gosh, what? I knew I had this disease and that people die really young from it, but at the same time, just to actually hear that was really hard for me. And I got really depressed for a while, and that at the same time was when I started really going to God, and the messages at church just talking about how He would fix things, and even if it wasn't in this life, in the next life, things would get better. And I just really clung to that and started reading my Bible more and just sitting and talking with God. I remember one night in 10th grade, maybe, I was in the hospital, and I was sitting there staring out the window, just kind of talking with God, and I was wow, I'm so unhappy and feel so sick and just miserable. Just imagine how much more pain Jesus went through to die for us, so that this doesn't have to be the end. My life now or then, not being able to breathe, not being able to do what I wanted to do, that wasn't the end for me. There could be more. And that was amazing to me. I just could hardly even comprehend how cool it was. And I just started reading more and more about about the Bible and learning that, God doesn't promise us a good life. He doesn't even promise us anything good will happen. In fact, he promises the opposite. It's John 16:33, and just a part of it, so it's not the whole verse, so go read it. But it says, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world." And that just was something I really could cling to at the time, because as I'd been discovering, it's like God does not promise good. And that verse right there says it. It's like he doesn't say, in this world you'll have rainbow and sunshine and it'll be great, and if not, it's because God abandoned you or isn't real. No, he's like, you're going to have trouble, but it's okay. I'm going to help you. And so that was something that just I really, really clung to. And just through that and through all the pain and just dealing with the fact that I was not only like, as I said, my doctor gave me 5 more years to live, but it wasn't like 5 great years. It was 5 years where I was sick all the time, and I just was able to do less and less and less. And it was almost like the less I could do, the more I clung to God. So that led me to another verse. I think I learned it at church, but as I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I'm going through. So it's 2 Corinthians 12:10, and it says, "That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecution, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong." And that was exactly what I was experiencing. I was the weakest I had ever been in my life, and just would get weaker as the days go on. And yet at the same time, I felt the strongest and like the closest to God, and just my life was good. Besides, like, the health part was not good, and I hated that and was super depressed sometimes about it. But like, as far as how I felt about it was good. And like, I knew, you know what, everything is going to be okay. And I realized that I just was completely dependent on God, and that without him, it was crippling. Just the hopelessness of life, and God provided hope to those situations. And so I would just started talking to God all the time. And it was one day on the bus, I would just sit and stare out the window and just be talking with God on the bus. And I came to this realization that, like, you know what, I want you in my life. I want you to guide my life. And I just remember asking God, I was like, hey, like, I know you hear all my thoughts, and you know everything I'm thinking. But I want you to hear everything I'm thinking. And like, I'm acknowledging that I know you're there, and that I know you're listening, and I want you to be listening. And I think that was the moment that, like, it really became my own faith. And I really just clung to that and started going to church all the time. Like, I loved to go. And I would be the one in my family actually that would be like, hey, let's go to church. Come on, guys. Instead of my parents just dragging me. And I'd read my Bible a lot, which was something I hadn't done before. And just the transformation was amazing, and just the hope that I felt. Even though I'm at the worst and just getting sicker, and I knew, like, there's no cure for CF. Like, this is it. I'm just going to die of this disease. And I still had that hope in God that, you know what, it was going to be okay. And he knew what was going to happen, and he's in control. And this was not something that he was shocked by. He knew. And actually, long story short, I ended up getting a transplant, which shocked me. God knew that was going to happen. I didn't. And so now I'm doing better. I mean, I still, like, CF is gone from my lungs, but it's still, like, now I just have transplant stuff to deal with, and could get rejection any day that doesn't go away. So it's like, I'm not cured. Like, yeah, I still, now, you know, I have God, and things are okay. And I know everything's going to work out, and God knows what's going on. So I just want to encourage you, if you're in a place where you don't know what's happening, or like you don't feel strong, and you don't feel like you can keep going on, you can, and God's with you. He wants to hear about it. He knows how you feel. So I just want to encourage you to just reach out to God and talk to him. Prayer doesn't have to be something fancy, like the set words that you say that's fancy. You can just talk to God and just be like, oh, hey God, like, here's what's going on in my life, and he wants to hear from you. Like, if you have any questions or you want to talk with me, I'm happy to talk with you. You can just reach out to me. So yeah, hope you guys have a good night. Bye.